Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking your custom stack of sources, so formal risk mitigation reviews, meteorological data, local news broadcasts from KESQ and CBS Los Angeles, and, well, a literal mountain of raw, furious, real-time fan tweets.
Yeah, that was a lot to read through.
Right, and we're using all of that to answer one really critical question. What happens when an 80,000-person desert party violently collides with historic climate volatility?
It's a fascinating scenario to analyze.
It really is. I mean, imagine you're trying to navigate your way out of a sprawling, completely unfamiliar city, but during a total blackout.
Which is, an inherently disorienting concept on its own. You're relying entirely on a handful of glowing exit signs
Right.
and the unpredictable movements of the thousands of people directly around you just to figure out which way is out.
Right. Now, take that exact scenario, but imagine the air itself is filled with sand.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there is so much blowing dirt and debris that you physically cannot open your eyes.
Wow.
You are experiencing what emergency professionals actually call functional blindness.
Which is terrifying.
And you are sharing that dark, suffocating environment with 80,000 other people, all of you trying to escape through the exact same narrow pathways at the exact same time.
And that right there, that pushes the situation past a simple logistical headache straight into it's a severe mass casualty threat.
Yeah.
Because you lose all visual wayfinding, and panic just becomes the dominant contagion.
Which is exactly the nightmare scenario that unfolded on the night of Saturday, April 25, 2026, when the Stagecoach Country Music Festival out in Indio, California, was forced into a sudden emergency
It was
evacuation.
a really unprecedented night.
Totally. So our mission today is to extract the ultimate takeaways on how massive live events navigate these sudden climate shifts. We are going to explore the terrifying on-the-ground logistics, the brutal fan experience, and the incredible, unexpected ways the artists adapted when the dust finally settled.
There's a lot to get into.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Before we get to the chaos of the crowd running for the exits, we really have to understand the invisible threat that triggered the evacuation in the first place.
Right, the weather.
Because looking at the meteorological data you provided in the sources, this wasn't some freak anomaly that just materialized out of a clear blue sky, was it?
No, not at all. This was a highly predicted clash between extreme weather patterns and temporary infrastructure.
Okay.
The National Weather Service, or NWS, had actually been monitoring a deteriorating synoptic environment all week.
A deteriorating synoptic environment.
Yeah.
That sounds like something out of a disaster movie. I mean, break that down for me. What does that actually mean on the ground for someone standing in a pair of cowboy boots in the middle of Indio?
Right, so think of the atmosphere like a giant invisible balloon being squeezed.
Yeah.
You had a tightening pressure gradient setting up across the region,
Okay.
specifically a massive high-pressure system sitting over the Pacific Ocean. And it's pushing aggressively against a low-pressure trough parked over the Great Basin.
Oh, wow.
So the air desperately wants to rush from the high-pressure zone into the low-pressure zone to equalize.
So the air is just rushing across California, and the Coachella Valley just happens to be in the way.
It is actually worse than just being in the way. The local geography weaponizes that rushing air.
Wait, how?
Well, the wind gets funneled through the nearby San Gorgonio Pass, which acts exactly like the narrow nozzle on a hose.
Oh, I see.
It compresses and accelerates the airflow. So the NWS was predicting sustained winds of 25 to 35 miles per hour across the board.
Okay.
But the critical danger was the gusts. They were forecasting hits of 50 miles per hour on the valley floor and potentially reaching a historic 65 miles per hour coming through that mountain pass.
65 miles per hour. I want to linger on that for a second because that is not a stiff breeze.
No, absolutely not.
That is enough force to turn a pop-up tent into a kite and a metal lawn chair into a deadly projectile.
Exactly. And that wind was really only the mechanical threat. There was a secondary biological threat compounding the danger.
Right, the dust.
Yes. The South Coast Air Quality Management District, the AQMD, issued a concurrent air quality alert.
Oh.
This was severe particle pollution.
Which brings us back to that terrifying idea of functional blindness. I mean, the sources mentioned the air was just thick with kicked-up dirt and sand, posing a serious respiratory risk.
Especially for the elderly or people with pre-existing heart and lung conditions.
Yeah, you literally couldn't see the stage in front of you, and you could barely breathe.
What's fascinating here is how the live event industry's underlying culture is finally shifting in response to these exact conditions.
How so?
Well, historically, the entertainment business has lived and died by a very stubborn mantra, the show must go on.
Right.
It has always been an endurance mindset, prioritizing the spectacle over almost everything else.
Right.
But what we saw at Stagecoach was planners establishing hard, objective meteorological thresholds where human life is actually prioritized over the momentum of the show.
And looking at the formal review, the visual trigger for that threshold being crossed is incredibly dramatic.
Oh, the swaying structure.
Yes, the massive speaker arrays and the heavy lighting rigs suspended over the stages actually started swaying in the wind. I mean, the danger wasn't just that the crowd was eating sand, right? It was the imminent catastrophic threat of structural collapse.
Yeah, imagine thousands of pounds of steel and electronics swinging wildly over a crowd of thousands.
It's horrifying.
And the moment those suspended structures start swaying beyond their strictly engineered tolerances, you have officially entered a code red scenario.
Right.
And to the festival's credit, that strict weather threshold successfully triggered their digital emergency systems.
But the digital trigger is where this story takes a very dark turn, in my opinion.
Definitely.
Because while the digital alert worked perfectly, the physical infrastructure of the venue critically failed to keep up.
Yes, this is a classic modern bottleneck scenario. We are looking at the fatal friction between digital speed and physical reality.
I want to walk through the exact timeline because the pacing is just wild.
Let's do it.
At 7:45 p.m., the giant screens flanking the T-Mobile main stage and the Mustang stage suddenly cut away from the performers.
Just a total visual takeover.
Exactly. They flashed red and white with a stark, unmistakable message. Emergency evacuation postponed until further notice.
And then it escalated to people's phones.
Yes, literally 1 minute later at 7:46 p.m., the official Stagecoach mobile app pushed an alert to 80,000 phones simultaneously, telling everyone to exit the site and move to their vehicles.
And the digital escalation continued.
Yeah.
By 8:01 p.m., organizers were sending targeted SMS alerts, directing some attendees to shelter in the white forum tent north of the safari campground.
Okay.
The digital communication was multimodal, instant, and relentless.
But I don't get it. If they triggered a code red and pushed all these urgent messages, why on earth were the emergency gates still locked?
Yeah, that's the big failure.
I mean, fans are looking up, they're seeing palm trees bending in half, choking on dust clouds, and rushing for the exits. But according to multiple security logs and furious attendee reports, key emergency exits between the main stage and the entrance remained completely closed during that initial surge.
Well, it comes down to the psychology of event security and conflicting protocols.
Okay, what do you mean?
Event security teams are naturally paranoid about ticket jumpers and unauthorized access. Their default trained state is to keep people out.
Right, sure.
When the weather flipped so violently, human psychology couldn't switch gears fast enough from guard the gate to open the floodgates.
So what does this all mean when your phone is screaming at you to run, the giant screens are flashing red, but the physical gate in front of you is locked? It's like pulling a fire alarm in a crowded theater, but refusing to open the fire doors because management is worried about people sneaking back in without a ticket.
It is completely absurd.
It's insane.
Absurd. And entirely unacceptable from a risk management perspective. This is the aha moment for modern event planners, Technology has wildly outpaced physical infrastructure.
Wow, yeah.
You can send a push alert to 80,000 phones in 1 second, but it still takes 45 minutes to move 80,000 human bodies through physical gates.
Such a good point.
If you rely on tech-based alerts without synchronized, human-led reinforcement on the ground, you are essentially building a trap.
You really are.
You end up forcing tens of thousands of panicked people into high-density choke points in an environment with zero visibility. Security teams must be pre-authorized to completely abandon standard ingress controls the absolute second a code red is called.
Thankfully, that bottleneck didn't result in a mass casualty crush, though it left the crowd incredibly shaken.
Very lucky.
But escaping the venue was just the first phase of the disaster. Because what happened next completely broke the social contract between the festival and the fans.
Yes. You're referring to the resumption of the festival and the massive logistical trap it created.
The reverse.
Exactly.
The winds finally died down. And at 8:52 p.m., just over an hour after telling everyone to flee for their lives into a sandstorm, the app cheerfully announced the show would resume.
Yeah.
By 9:37 p.m., the festival's social media accounts were jubilantly posting, "We're back in the saddle."
A remarkable turnaround time, certainly. But it completely ignored the physical reality of the evacuation instructions they had just issued to their own attendees.
Right. If you were a fan who drove your own car and just sheltered in the parking lot, it worked out perfectly. You simply walked back through the gates.
Sure.
But for the thousands of fans who relied on the festival's shuttles or rideshare apps, this evacuation was a one-way system. The shuttles did exactly what they were instructed to do. They evacuated people, taking them far away to remote parking lots and hotels in places like Palm Desert and La Quinta.
Because we have to look at the mechanics of those transportation networks.
Mm-hmm.
A shuttle system at a mega festival is designed purely for high-volume egress at the end of the night. It is a circulatory system programmed only for one-way flow. You cannot suddenly ask a fleet of dispersed buses to reverse direction and bring 30,000 people back to a venue at 9:30 p.m. without massive pre-planning.
See, here's where it gets really interesting. Imagine you are a listener who paid $500 for a weekend pass.
Yeah.
You get the alert, you follow the safety rules, you immediately get on a shuttle to clear the hazard zone, just like the giant screens in your phone instructed you to do.
You did everything right.
Exactly. And now you are sitting in your pajamas in a hotel room in Palm Desert, eating Taco Bell, watching on Instagram as the people who broke the rules and hid in the bathrooms get to enjoy the headliner.
It's infuriating.
Aren't you being penalized for being a good listener? Stagecoach essentially punished the people who followed the rules.
Which is precisely the root of the massive consumer rights discourse that exploded online in the aftermath.
Yep.
The fans were trapped. Returning to the festival was functionally impossible.
Yeah.
And compounding the frustration, many fans reported that ground staff and security actively told them the event was fully canceled during the evacuation, not just postponed.
They demanded refunds, arguing the festival effectively denied access to a massive class of people. You can't issue a mandatory life safety evacuation that forces people miles off-site, completely sever their transportation, and then pretend everything is fine an hour later.
No, you can't. The reputational damage from that kind of mixed messaging is severe, and it highlights the absolute necessity of what risk managers call escalating contingency instructions.
Okay, break down escalating contingency. What does that actually look like in practice so this doesn't happen again?
So instead of a blanket exit the venue order that indiscriminately pushes people onto one-way shuttles, organizers need to establish specific standby zones.
Okay.
You move the crowd away from the swaying stages and the hazardous temporary structures, but you hold them in a designated fortified safe area on site.
That makes sense.
You provide the explicit instruction that the event is paused, not over. Furthermore, if an evacuation is categorized as a postponement, the transportation infrastructure must be mechanically designed to support a return.
How so?
For instance, implementing bidirectional transit contingencies, like requiring shuttles to wait 30 minutes at their remote destinations before looping back to the venue, just in case the weather clears.
Okay, so while thousands of rule-following fans were stranded miles away, completely cut off from the music, the organizers had a completely different crisis on their hands.
Right.
What to do with the tens of thousands of fans who were still trapped inside the venue? The artists had to completely restructure their night, leading to an incredibly unique moment of musical solidarity.
Because the evacuation entirely scrambled a very tightly packed, highly choreographed Saturday schedule.
It was a total domino effect of cancellations. The DJ Marshmello was cut off just 15 minutes into his set. The rock band Bush managed to finish their set right as the winds surged to their absolute peak.
Incredible timing for them.
Seriously. But major acts like Journey and country star Riley Green had their full Saturday night sets canceled completely. Gavin Adcock's solo set was scrapped too, although he did pop up later to join a whiskey jam session.
The pressure was immense on the organizers and the remaining artists to salvage the night for the fans who had endured the sandstorm and stayed on the grounds.
And the festival made a massive logistical concession. They extended their strict curfew from 11:55 p.m. all the way to 1 a.m. to make room.
Which isn't cheap or easy to do.
Right. The headliner, Lainey Wilson, had her set delayed by an entire hour, finally taking the main stage at 10:30 p.m. She didn't just ignore the chaos that had just unfolded.
No, she leaned into it.
She immediately addressed the reality of the situation, telling the crowd, quote, "Thank you so much for sticking out the wind. But then she used her massive headlining platform to save Riley Green's night.
A move that is frankly highly unusual in the modern festival circuit. Headlining slots are fiercely protected, heavily branded real estate.
She brings out Riley Green and the band Little Big Town for a massive group cover of Merle Haggard's I Think I'll Just Stay Here and Drink.
Brilliant song choice.
Which is incredibly fitting for a crowd that just survived being sandblasted. But then she does the unthinkable. She actually yields her own stage. She steps back and lets Riley Green have his solo stagecoach moment, performing his hit, I Wish Grandpa's Never Died.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a profound contrast.
Oh.
On one hand, you have the severe mechanical and logistical failures of the festival's infrastructure, locked emergency gates, the cognitive failure of the security protocols, the one-way shuttle trap.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have the cultural success and spontaneous adaptability of the artists themselves. The human element stepped in and saved the artistic integrity of the night when the logistical element completely failed.
It's a masterclass in making lemonade out of lemons. She essentially turned a heavily choreographed million-dollar stadium spectacle into a massive 80,000-person campfire sing-along, just to give Green his moment in front of the fans.
Absolutely.
It's the kind of authentic, unscripted moment attendees will talk about for decades.
It absolutely becomes festival lore. But, while that artistic resilience saved Saturday night, the sheer hostility of the desert environment over the entire weekend proves that festivals must permanently rethink how they are engineered from the ground up.
Why is that?
Because Saturday's windstorm was not the end of the environmental threats.
It was like the desert was actively trying to evict them.
Precisely. It was a multi-hazard weekend that took a heavy psychological toll on everyone involved. The very next morning, Sunday, at 8:44 a.m., a 3.6 magnitude earthquake struck in nearby Cabazon.
That is just 10 miles away from the festival grounds.
Right. Now, there was no structural damage from the quake itself, but consider the psychological impact. You have a historic, terrifying windstorm on Saturday night. You have a severe air quality alert that actually lasted until 11 a.m. Sunday, overlapping directly with day 3 of the festival. And then the ground literally shakes beneath your feet. It significantly heightened the sense of environmental volatility.
Which makes those strategic recommendations from the formal review seem a lot less like suggestions and a lot more like survival requirements.
Oh, exactly.
We discussed the need for pre-authorized fail-safe egress points to override security and those bidirectional transportation loops. But the review also stressed deeply integrating climate-aware design into the physical footprint of the festival.
Yes, specifically the necessity for clean air zones. The review advocates for installing high-efficiency particulate air or HEPA filtration systems in massive enclosed structures, like the Palomino and the honky-tonk tents.
Really?
Yeah, to protect attendees against fine particulate matter during severe AQMD alerts.
I am struggling to picture how that works in reality. Are we eventually going to see country music festivals turn into giant, sterile clean rooms?
Sounds crazy, right?
It does. Trying to balance that rugged, wild desert cowboy aesthetic with actual hospital-grade, HEPA-filtered health safety seems like a massive contradiction. You go to Stagecoach to get a little dusty, to drink a beer under the open sky, not to be sealed inside a positive-pressure HVAC environment.
But this raises an important question about the evolution of live entertainment in an era of climate volatility.
Yep.
Modern mega festivals are no longer just cultural events. They are incredibly complex industrial operations. They are pop-up cities built from scratch in a matter of weeks.
That's true.
And like any modern city, they must be engineered to withstand severe, multi-hazard climate thresholds well in advance. The rugged open-air aesthetic will increasingly have to be an illusion, a veneer layered over top of highly sophisticated, hardened infrastructure.
Oh, wow.
You can still wear the cowboy boots and listen to the music, but the canvas tent you are standing under needs to be engineered with the air handling capacity of a medical facility.
It is a wild shift to wrap your head around, turning a desert party into a climate fortress. Okay, let's bring this all together. Looking at the stack of sources, the 2026 Stagecoach Festival will go down in history as a massive victory for life safety. Nobody was crushed in the bottlenecks, no swaying structures collapsed on the crowd, and it was a beautiful showcase of artistic camaraderie thanks to Lainey Wilson's adaptability.
Yes, definitely.
But it also stands as a stark, unavoidable warning about logistical communication and the fragility of fan trust. You cannot tell tens of thousands of people to flee for their lives, trap them in one-way transit systems, and then excitedly tell them the party's back on without expecting major, justified backlash.
The expectation of the modern ticket buyer has fundamentally changed. If an event is going to ask you to brave extreme elements, they have to prove they possess the mechanical and logistical capability to manage those elements seamlessly.
So the next time you're at a massive stadium show or an outdoor music festival, take a second. Look away from the stage. Take a hard look at the emergency exits and ask yourself if they are actually open.
Good advice.
Look at the transportation setup outside the gates and figure out if it can bring you back if things go wrong. And most importantly, look at the sky. Because you are now armed with the knowledge of exactly how fast a shift in the weather can push those systems to their absolute breaking point.
And I will leave you with one final thought to mull over regarding the future of these massive live events.
Hmm?
We have spent this time analyzing the absolute necessity of upgrading infrastructure to survive extreme climate volatility, the need to build fortified, wind-resistant stages, the engineering required to install massive HEPA-filtered cleanroom tents, and the logistics of running redundant bidirectional transit systems.
Yeah.
If event organizers have to continuously spend millions upon millions of dollars to implement these industrial-grade safety measures just to keep the doors open, what happens to the cost of a ticket?
Oh, man.
Will the outdoor music festivals of the future become so astronomically expensive to safely operate that they price out the average fan entirely?
It's a really heavy question. We might be looking at a future where surviving that sprawling, unfamiliar city in a sandstorm isn't just a terrifying logistical nightmare. It's a luxury experience you have to empty your bank account just to be a part of.